Welcome and thanks for joining our quick demo on HSO Innovation Dynamics Rental Management Solution. We're going to take you on a quick tour of all the features and benefits of this solution for rental management.
Thank you very much for the nice introduction and also a warm welcome from my side. I hope this reaches you well in these times. And as you can see, my name is Max Dinzer. I'm the pre-sales consultant of HSO Innovation, responsible for 3 products: Dynamics Rental Management, Dynamics Service Management, and Dynamics Advanced Field Service. I am within the Microsoft ecosystem since 2016. You can also find my contact details within that slide. If we look at the key features and capabilities of Dynamics Rental Management, I will show you all of them later in the live demonstration, but we not only support an end-to-end rental process, we support even more, and that you can see in the solution map for every of our products. We have a solution map that is describing the key functionalities further. What I would like to highlight here is the down part, because as Darko already mentioned, Microsoft Dynamics Rental Management is part of Microsoft Dynamics 365 for finance and supply chain management. It's a whole module itself, and therefore fully integrated with the project module. We can make use of the financials, logistics, human resources, and even have a link to the production module. On top of that, in the 2 dark blue containers, you see rental objects and fixed assets. Rental objects are more from an administrative and movement perspective, so we can add attributes, add our daily rates and price agreements to it. We even have kit functionality with supplementary items. From a fixed asset perspective, we use more the financial part, so acquisitions, depreciation, and a so-called 360-degree asset view. And above that, you see the more administrational and operational work like quoting, rental contracts, the invoicing, of course, and pre and post rental inspections. I just mentioned the 360-degree asset view. What do we mean with a 360-degree asset view? That means we can picture the whole process, the whole asset life cycle of a rental object within Dynamics Rental Management, and that means from manufacturing or purchasing the rental object to activating it and adding it to your fleet, and even repair, renting it out, reusing it, even scrapping it, and even selling it. So we have multiple functionalities to provide you for the whole full life cycle of an asset. If we look at an end-to-end standard rental process, this is the capability that Dynamics Rental Management has. We can offer a quote with a rental object and specific prices and supplementary items to a customer, and that quote could then be converted into a rental contract or rental order. On the rental order, we can do pre and post rental inspections together with our product Dynamics Service Management, so they are fully integrated as well, because they are 2 modules within the ERP system, and that rental contract, of course, can then be invoiced. And especially for the equipment rental industry, we also have an extended off rental and return process, because you can imagine a crane does not move that easy back from the customer side to your warehouse, and therefore we even have capabilities to send out employees to the customer and let them get your equipment back. And in the end, afterwards, if you want to sell the equipment to the customer, that's also a possible capability. Above the standard process, you see many more capabilities we have, and that is, for example, cross rental. So we can also rent out equipment from different companies, because usually we see that rental companies never say no. Usually you have partner contracts with different rental providers, and you can even rent out equipment of different companies. Then, of course, the standard rental transactions and the full Microsoft stack of the Power Platform, speaking of Power Automate, Power Apps, Power BI, and of course, since latest, IoT capabilities. Speaking of IoT, we get to the interesting bit, and that's what's new with Dynamics Rental Management. And what's new in the latest and greatest development is that we have IoT alerts within Dynamics Rental Management. We can set up IoT devices and link them to a rental object. These IoT devices can have different message types, and message types define which JSON format is being sent to the Azure IoT Hub. The IoT Hub via Logic App transforms that into a clever and smart IoT alert that we can make use of within Dynamics Rental Management. And with that IoT alert being sent back to our solution, we can also invoice usage. So think of power by the hour of a generator or fuel consumption if you rent out a car. And we also have extended capability since the latest development in the operations planning area. So we can now not only rent equipment, but we can also rent out human resources. And that could be useful, especially in the construction industry, where you rent out a crane, but that crane has to be operated as well. And therefore you want to rent out the driver or let the customer pay for the driver as well. Well, we also investigated further is rental power apps, because we see a lot of, and especially Microsoft, heading more into the power apps direction, and therefore I will later show you small capabilities we already supply you with out of the box with power apps. But of course, there is always room for improvement. So think of whatever you are capable or what your business could need for a power app. We can make that possible, because as Darko mentioned before, in our Premier services, we have developers especially for power apps. Also IoT-driven reporting via Power BI, and what's also new is that rental price lists and agreements are now part of the solution and can be added to a rental contract. So now I've already spoken a lot about the Internet of Things. If we look from a process perspective, how exactly is that working? In the top left corner, you see a Fitbit now for on-site demonstrations. Usually I wear a Fitbit, which is a smartwatch that tracks your pulse and your steps. And that is being used to easily demo, because during my presentations, of course, I move from side to side and make some steps, and my pulse is going up and down. And these alerts we kind of then send over the Azure IoT Hub, then they get read by a service bus, and the service bus, together with a logic app, sends them back to our Dynamics Rental Management solution. Within batches, these IoT alerts come in. You can also do that on a real-time perspective. These batches get then transformed into transactions. Transactions could be the geolocation of your power generator, but could also be the kVA output of it, or information required in the service industry for preventive maintenance. We then put them as so-called project transactions against the project, and can then later on, based on these project transactions, invoice fees, expenses, hours, and items as usage. Enough from a PowerPoint perspective. That's the last slide, because as I always tend to say, seeing is believing, and let's go live into the system. I would just like to read that quote to you, because if you knew what you know, you would be unbeatable. And I think in terms of IoT and big data times, that is a really important sentence, and also gets me to Power BI. Because what we will see in the live demonstration is that we create a lot of transactions, a lot of data is being gathered. This data you should fetch, because your rental solution are the biggest data resource you have, and you should make use of that, and therefore build nice visualized dashboards like you see here to track, for example, your financial and physical utilization of rental equipment, or the rental revenue per branch. But this being said, let's get into the system. And as you can see now, I'm already within finance and operations, and within our rental module. And before we go to the extended process, I will show you how easy it is to create with our solution and rental order. So rent out equipment and invoice based on that. Therefore, you go to the rental order overview, you just click new, and that will open a screen and lets you create a new rental order. You pick a customer that you want to rent out equipment for, pick a specific period for the rental contract, and if we click on create, it creates as a rental order. The rental order is built on top of the standard sales order of Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management, so we can easily add an item, for example, a power generator to it, save it. And what will then pop up is the kit functionality I've been talking about, and therefore we can easily provide you with kit functionalities. We can define optional and mandatory supplementary items. For example, every power generator could come with a cable that is mandatory, but optional could be a flux generator. And the geeks out of you must have seen that I'm a big movie fan now, and probably get the hint, but let's add the cable for now as it's mandatory and leave out the flux generator. If I click OK, the system automatically calculates the supplementary items in and puts them on to the order as we see now. And As I said, we are gonna make the quick and dirty rental creation process. I will add the serial number manual here. We of course have capabilities to edit via a picking list and send out your warehouse employee to pick it up and append the serial number. This would be then done via generating a picking list, which is sent to your warehouse. But now we're just gonna send the packing slip because we're gonna pretend, okay, we've already picked the item and do kind of counter rental, as I would call it. So now our power generator and our cable is being picked, and I'm posting the packing slip, which will give the warehouse the order to send out our rental equipment. And as soon as that happens, we see, okay, the status has changed to delivered. Now we're going to skip also the extended collection process. We are going to directly invoice via an invoice proposal this rental contract to the customer. And as soon as I click OK, an invoice is being created. As you can see, an invoice proposal has been created, and that invoice now has our lines with our periodic rental charges for the 2 months and for the 2 equipments. We're going to click on post. And the invoice is being posted. And yeah, that's our final invoice, and therefore already the end of the fast rental process within our system. Now let's get to the more extended capability. And therefore I would like to show you our rental object overview. So that's basically all your fleet and your total list of assets. We have multiple functionalities there, like adding a picture. We have an availability check. Based on that, we can check the availability of rental equipment for a specific period and in a specific warehouse. You see green, red means green is available, red is not available in that time frame, is currently on an order. We can even add sub-rental object. That could be interesting if you want to have, for example, with a car, and sub-rental object could be an engine. So that allows us to also set up hierarchies. Here we have the link to the fixed asset and the finance module within F&O. We can also have an insight into our service model via the service tasks. We also have extended functionality on defining attributes for our rental equipment. Therefore, we also have the view and compare functionality, so you can easily advise your customer for the right product to the right time, with being able to have insight into availability and different attributes. What we also have from a category and searching perspective is our rental hierarchy. This is, for example, a crane hierarchy and contains all my rental cranes in the fleet. Via different attributes, I can filter them. So the system also only shows me cranes with 400 tons capability, or I could define what should be the maximal hosting capacity. From that perspective, if we look at rental, and I've prepared rental IoT object, we also see as soon as an IoT device is added, we can also check the current geographical location, and we can also do that via a map. So what pops up now is that the crane is being offshore near to the coast of Somalia. And if we click here, we see timestamps where the object has been moving. And therefore, we can provide you with real-time insights, where is actually the geographical location of your power generator or whatever type of rental equipment you have. If we look further and go into the rental object itself, we also have capabilities to add, for example, rental object documents. That could be blueprints or product descriptions or whatever you can think of. We have utilization settings based on calendars. We can add our financial dimensions as it's part of standard Dynamics 365 for finance and supply chain management. And here in the latest development, you see we can add an IoT device to the rental object and add an IoT message type to it. And that IoT message type is then defining, okay, what are we checking? And for that, we are measuring the power output, the fuel consumption, and the geographic latitude and longitude, and also some peak hour output and running hours. This all comes via the Azure IoT Hub, and therefore we are able to read out IoT usages later on the rental order. But so much from a rental object perspective. Let's dive deeper into the process, and let's see a rental order that contains IoT data. Yes, therefore I've prepared a rental order. We dive into that rental order, we see it's already delivered, it's already on site. From an order perspective, we see, okay, we can now add the price agreements here. Since the latest development, we can also add usages manually, so they don't have to come in via an IoT alert. I've typed in 4 hours of crane usage for that example, but on top of here, we also have the link to the IoT Hub. And as you can see here, a bunch of IoT alerts since yesterday have been accumulated. And if we look into them, we can see we had a power output of 75 with a peak of 100 and 1.88 hours of running. We can put on sales and a cost price against it, so that helps us also to track our physical and financial utilization from an IoT perspective. And the next step on the rental order would then be to invoice that based on the usage. Therefore, we generate an invoice proposal. Again, records to include should be the usage bits. And as soon as we then create the invoice, we are going to invoice the customer for all of the usage bits we just have seen in the period we've defined. That creates our rental order, and here we see the costs per IoT alert. And if we pause that now, the invoice proposal gets created and converted into an invoice. And here we see our final invoice containing every of the IoT alerts. And that is basically the quick way of getting IoT alerts within a rental order. Now we have generated a lot of data, but I also want to show you beginning till end rental process, and therefore we're going to start with another rental order. Create a new one. Pick our customer there for a specific period, and that period gets added another crane. And now we could say we want to manually add a usage to it. Let's do that for a moment. Then we're going to define an estimated quantity. It automatically calculates that up based on the period, but we can put an estimated quantity in comparison to an actual quantity. So from now on, you can also use the start button. That would mean that you start the usage now. So you can also trigger the IoT activation from an order level. Next step would then be to generate the picking list. Picking list is getting printed and sent out to the warehouse employee. The warehouse employee picks the picking list up, and via picking list registration, we can add a serial number to it. Click on the update all button. Yeah, and as soon as we have posted the picking list, the system picks our serial number and adds it to it. Then we're going to post the packing slip. This will send out the item to our customer. Here we can check our lines for the packing slip. We can then post the packing slip, and as soon as we post the packing slip, we can see the status of the order changes to delivered. And the status has changed to delivered. Therefore, our equipment is now at customer site, and the extended rental process would now request that we can collect that item again. And therefore, we're going to create a collection order. That collection order allows us to send, based on collection mode, a specific technician to the customer. We can define in which warehouse we want to put our equipment again. Can even define the date of the offerand, who is the collection responsible. That's my human resource I'm going to add. And as soon as I create the collection order, I will be able to see which equipment is at customer side and I can collect. The system suggests me a proposed quantity. That means that is the quantity of items we are expecting to having at customer side. And you see we also have a collected quantity, and that is the quantity that we then really pick up. And we can even differentiate to a return quantity, because it could also be that the equipment gets damaged on the way home, of course. The technician can add some notes in here. We can also see the collection status within here. What is important to mention from a collection process, we have 3 different types of collections. The first is the standard collection note. That's what we are in here now. And then we have a check-in note. Check-in is then the process of getting back from the customer to our warehouse. And a determination note allows you to even directly invoice the customer as soon as the item is back on stock. So we could also create an invoice from here. But let's start with the standard way. And therefore we generate a collection note. That collection note changes the status of the collection order to in process, and now our technician travels to customer site and then registers his collection. We have the capability to say, okay, the proposed quantity could be 0. That's we see a lot of happening, especially with supplementary items. In the order example previously, I've added, for example, a cable. Cables can go missing quite quickly, and therefore we have capabilities to define if items are not being collected and change the inventory stock because of that, and even add a reason code. So if I change the collected quantity, for example, to 0 now, the system asks me, because it detects a difference, what was the reason code? And that could be missing because the crane, probably the crane is not missing that easy. It's not that easy to hide a crane, but with cables and supplementary items, that could be useful. Or could be destroyed. The customer has destroyed it, or any other reasons you can think of. But let's stick with the happy flow. So I can show you the rest of the capabilities. You see the status of the collection order has changed to registered, and our collected quantity is 1. And now we can determine if we want to check it in. That means getting the equipment again on stock in our inventory, or directly terminate it. And directly terminating would create an invoice and check the item into our warehouse again. Therefore, we're going to go for the termination node, because that's the full capability. Click OK. And as soon as we post that, our collection order is being checked in, and therefore our rental equipment back on stock and back for availability. And talking about availability, I want to show you our latest and greatest development, the new scheduling board we have, and also the other capabilities from an availability perspective. So the order has been terminated. Therefore, we now go to the just mentioned other capabilities from an availability perspective. Therefore, we go back to our rental object screen. So from an availability perspective, we have even more than just the icons and the availability check I already told you about. We also have a scheduler that easily shows us if equipment is on order and what kind of status the order has. Is it being collected right now? Is it delivered, or is it just on a quotation, and therefore could also be reserved from an inventory perspective? If we then click 3 example items, and we see they are all red, so they all should be on a current order or quotation, or at least not available from a picking perspective. The scheduler is a basic overview of the rental orders, and we see via different colors we can define the different rental statuses. So a green could be status delivered, and pink could be for on quotation. You see the rental status is still open, but above the header level says quotation. And we see also from a time period, from when to when is it delivered and at which warehouse it is usually located. But we thought the scheduler is nice, but we have improved it, and therefore we've built with our latest development the scheduling overview, which is even more extended and combines our two products, Dynamics Rental Management and Dynamics Service Management, because you can schedule service technicians in there. You can schedule also rental machines like cranes in there. And what you see loading now is our new service schedule board. It picks now the 3 items I have picked, but if we, for example, go just into the planning board without having items picked, I can see the full overview of my resources. So these are my human resources. These are my cranes, again, in different colors. If they are on an order or on a quotation, I also have the full requirements in my rental order lines down here. I can schedule service tasks for my technicians. I can even schedule rental usage. That means crane hours, driving hours. As you see here, also, for example, for an excavator that is needed, I can easily create a service task or a rental order. If I pick now one of my rental cranes and say, okay, for that period, I want to have a rental order, then I just drag and drop the time frame, and then pops up the new order line. That doesn't have to be an order, and could also be in quotation, and you don't have to create a new order. You could also add it to an existing order or quotation. It picks exactly the time frame we have chosen, picks exactly the rental item we have picked with serial number, and I can add it to a customer and therefore create an order which is related to a project or not. That is depending on your setup. But we're not going to do that for now. I want to show you the other capabilities we also have from a planning perspective and a scheduling perspective. And therefore, we go back to the rental object screen again, because what we did now is planning availability and scheduling for serialized items, but we also have availability capabilities for bulk items. And yes, I'm still here. And what I've picked now is the bulk supplementary stock. You see there's only one line. This is our bulk cable, and if I pick that, go again on the under rental object, and this time the availability overview. Here we can ask the system to show us the availability of bulk stock. We see we have 9 available in total, and based on the requirement, it picks the required capacity. But we have even more capabilities to show that in a nice, beautiful graph. If I, for example, pick the time frame from now to here, save the settings and click on refresh, and then scroll a little bit down, I can see my behavior of my bulk availability. The dark blue graph shows the total fleet availability, and the light blue graph shows the current availability during the day, so I can see based on the time period how is the actual availability of my bulk stock. And this allows you for many different scenarios. So from an availability perspective, our Dynamics Rental Management solution provides you with actual insights on the availability, and you should be able to provide your customer with the right products at the right time. So much from an availability perspective. Now that I've showed you the full rental end-to-end process and all these stuff around for finding the right equipment, we have created a lot of data now. And as you might remember, we have discussed from a Power BI perspective, physical and financial utilization. And therefore, there is one last nice functionality in that screen. And if we again pick 2 rental objects, we not only have compare functionality from an attribute perspective, no, we can also compare the physical and financial utilization of your rental objects. As I said, we can do it for the physical or for the financial part. We have a nice graph here showing the gross margin, the total revenue that rental object has brought in, and also the total cost. Based on cost of rental codes, we can track the cost as well. We can see how many of them we have on hand. So that means that these are now serialized items, but we can also track the physical and financial utilization of bulk stock. We have an insight into the feasible revenue, the revenue rate, and actual days on rent, and feasible expected days on rent for a year, and then an utilization rate percentage, and that can be compared for different rental objects. This allows us, if you remember back to the Power BI screen, to gather that data, not only within Dynamics 365 for finance and supply chain management. No, we can also make nice visualizations within Power BI to give you right data for decision making. And you should really think of that and make use of the full Microsoft stack. That's what we highly advise you. These rental dashboards, we provide you with Dynamics license of Dynamics Rental Management, but of course we are also having a specialized BI department that can think of any report you want to track. And one last bit, because there is still one function that I want to show you, and that is still in development, but I can give you a little preview of that already, and I think that is a big factor for a lot of rental companies, because nowadays we also have rental price agreements. And that means we don't only have our cost of rental codes and rental rates anymore. No, we can set up a full price agreement, a full price list, as you want to name it, specific for a customer, and attach that to either rental usage or to rental objects or on a rental order. So we can even make a specific price list for a rental order, and therefore you add prices to all your rental objects. You see here I have multiple rental objects in there with different prices, and give a name to that price list, and can even make a version. What is also from an updating perspective, because prices you see here is a current date, of course change time by time, is that you are able to extract these price lists from finance and supply chain management into an Excel sheet and update them in a quick way, and load them back into the system.
Well, that concludes our demo today. If you'd like to take a look at any of the solutions that we presented today, or any other industry solutions that we have for manufacturing, please visit us at us.hso.com.